Today we're going to be talking about gerunds and infinitives. You might be thinking, well, what is a gerund and infinitive? Why is this important to me? I'm sure that you've been in this situation. You're trying to write an essay. You're trying to write this sentence, right? The researchers decided, but then you get stuck and you think, should it be decided to conduct or decided conducting another study? And you think, well, I know the vocabulary word is conduct, but which form do I use? This is a problem with gerund or infinitive. And today we're going to find out what is the difference and how we can use these. So our goals for today are to find out what a gerund is, when to use a gerund, what an infinitive is, and when to use an infinitive. Let's get started with gerunds. A gerund looks like a verb plus ing. Now, when I say verb, I just mean the regular old verb. We call it verb base, right? Like the basic form of the verb. So this means no ed, no s, right? None of that, just the regular verb and then ing. I like reading, right? This is the regular verb plus ing. Shopping is something I usually do online these days. Here it's just the regular verb and ing, okay? These are two examples of gerunds. The next question is, how do we use gerunds, right? I know what they look like. How do I put them in a sentence? Well, the first thing to know is that a gerund is a noun. Many students say, it looks like a verb because it has ing. Isn't it continuous or progressive? No, right? A gerund is kind of a tricky noun, meaning that it looks like a verb, but it's actually a noun. And just like any other noun, a gerund can either be the subject or the object in the sentence. Take a look at sentences 1 and 2. In one of the sentences, the gerund in bold is a subject. In the other sentence, it's an object. Pause the video while you think about it. So here's the answer. In number 1, taking a math class is the object. We know because the sentence already has a subject, he, and a verb, is. Number 2, playing football is the subject. We know because A, it's at the beginning of the sentence, and B, we don't have any other subject. We only have a verb, is. So knowing that a gerund can either be a subject or object in the sentence, let's look at one of the rules when we know when to use a gerund. So the first rule is that gerunds come after certain verbs. And we just kind of have to memorize these verbs and use them a lot in speaking and in writing, right? And the more we use them, the more automatic it will come to us. So here's an example, and some of these you might know. Enjoy. My family enjoys playing board games. So here playing is the gerund, and it's coming after the common verb enjoy, which takes the gerund after it. Suggest is another one. My boss suggested taking a day off when I felt sick. Mind is another one. We often use it in negatives or questions. Do you mind? No, I don't mind waiting for you. Quit is another one. My father quit smoking years ago, right? His lungs are very happy for that, and so am I. Avoid is a very common verb that we use, and we use a gerund after it. My brother avoids doing things that he's not good at. And the last one, consider, which means think about. Have you considered switching your major? No, I haven't considered doing that. Okay. So again, these are 6 very common verbs that if you use them, you know you can use a gerund after them. There's another list at the bottom of our screen, right, of very common verbs that we use with gerunds. But you can find a much more extensive list if you search for it online. Okay. So the second rule about gerunds is that we use gerunds after prepositions. And many students, when they find out this rule, they're like, oh my gosh, this is such a game changer because this is a very hard and fast rule that I can use. If I see a preposition, I know I can use a gerund after it. Cool. The more difficult part, though, is deciding which preposition to use. So today I'm going to give you a few categories of verbs that use the same preposition. For example, be excited and be worried both use the preposition about, right? See if you can guess these verbs. What preposition would you use after complain, dream, and talk? Well, we can use about, or we could use of, right? And they have the same meaning. Talk about, talk of. Dream about, dream of. What about this last category? Apologize, blame someone, forgive someone, have an excuse. We can use them with the preposition for, right? Here are some examples of words from each of the category plus a preposition plus ing, the gerund, right? So the words in the categories are underlined, preposition in red, and in bold is the gerund. You can pause the video and take words from this list, use them with a gerund and put a gerund after, use them with a preposition and put a gerund after. And if you want to email me those sentences, I'm happy to check them for you so you can see how you're doing. Let's move on to a few more categories with prepositions. These prepositions here will take the preposition, these verbs will take the preposition from, right? Stop someone from doing something. This category, interested, I bet you already know this one, or believe, will go with the preposition in. And the last one, count. Count here means like depend, right? Like you can rely. Or insist will both take the preposition on, right? So again, you can pause the video as you practice this, writing sentences of your own, but I'm going to give you a few examples, which you can also write down. Okay, moving on to our last section. Approve, be accused, be afraid. I bet you know be afraid. What preposition would you use with afraid? We'd use of, right, for this whole category. Be tired, right? So when you've done something again and again and again and you're so sick of it, we can use of, right? Or the preposition from, right? I'm so sick of doing the dishes, right? I want to take a night off. And our last category, be accustomed, in addition, be committed, be devoted, look forward. We would use these with the preposition to, right? And here's a list of some sentences. Again, please feel free to write your own, email them to me. I'd love to see your sentences and see how you're doing with this. All right, students, so I hope you have an idea of gerunds a little bit better. Let's take a look at infinitives next. Let's switch gears. An infinitive looks very different from a gerund. An infinitive starts with to and then verb, right? And remember, when we say verb here, this means no ed, no ing, no s, no lol, right? It's got to just be the basic form of the verb, right? For example, I like to read, right? Or it's more difficult to drive when it's snowing, right? Both of these, to read and to drive, are examples of infinitives. Of course, the question is, how do we use infinitives? Where do we put them? Just like gerunds, infinitives come after certain verbs. So here I have a list of more verbs that take the infinitive for you: hope, plan, promise, refuse, offer, and decide, right? After each of these verbs, we use the infinitive, not the gerund, right? And at the very bottom, I have a list of other verbs that also use only the infinitive after them. Again, you can pause the video while you practice these on your own. Feel free to email me some sentences to see how you're doing. The second and the last rule is that infinitives come after adjectives, right? Remember that gerunds come after prepositions. Infinitives come after adjectives. So if you use an adjective like challenging or fun or interesting, you can use an infinitive after it. For example, it's challenging to learn a new language, as we know. I think it's fun to play soccer, but Tim doesn't. Or it's important to do the homework, right? It's smart to ask the teacher when you're confused. It's impolite to speak when you're chewing food. Or it's not difficult to write an essay if you know how. Right? All right, students, so I hope this gives you an idea of not only gerunds, but also infinitives. Let's do a quick review. Take a look at the 3 sentences here. Pause your video to think about, does this sentence have a gerund or infinitive, and why? Okay, and here are the answers. Sentence number 1, I hope that you found a gerund here, finding. We use a gerund because it comes after a preposition, right? About is a preposition. Okay, number 2, did you find an infinitive or a gerund? I found an infinitive here, to study, right? And I know that it comes after the verb necessary. I'm sorry, the adjective necessary, right? Because an infinitive comes after an adjective. And I found another infinitive here, to pass, right? It's coming after want, right? Want is not an adjective. It's a common verb that we use before an infinitive, right? So that's why we use an infinitive here. I want to pass, I want to do, I want to take, etc. And number 3, infinitive or gerund, right? I hope that you found this gerund, moving, right? And it's used after the common verb that takes a gerund after it, consider, right? Consider plus gerund. Okay, students, so I hope that gives you a good idea. Let's review what we've learned so far. We've learned what gerunds look like. We've learned when to use gerunds, 2 different instances that we use gerunds in English. We've learned what an infinitive looks like, and we've also learned when to use infinitives, okay? The best advice I can give you here is to memorize the common verbs that take gerunds or infinitives and to practice, practice, practice. The more that you practice, not only in your writing, but also in your speaking in your everyday life, the more automatic it will feel, okay? So I hope that helped, and I will see you guys soon.